Hey everyone, and welcome to Weapons and Warfare for Straight Arrow News. I'm your host, Ryan Robertson. Happy almost birthday, America. Just ahead on this week's episode, the M10 Booker may have a new lease on life in the U.S. military. The Army may have killed the program, but another branch might just be in the M10's future. Plus, we're headed for the open water for our weapon of the week as we check out the Whiskey Project. We get up close and personal with a watercraft designed by and for warfighters to enhance their performance in maritime operations. Leading things off today, though, we're going to talk about an effort to address two of the Air Force's biggest obstacles when it comes to training and retaining their pilots. Those obstacles are resource constraints and just not enough available aircraft to meet minimal training requirements. But you know we are solutions-oriented journalists here on the show, so enter Red 6 and some potentially game-changing innovations for military aviators. That's why they're the subject of this week's debrief. What was once viewed as a short-term problem is now a generational one.
The Air Force's pilot force is too small, and it's poorly structured to be the force required to prevail in peer conflict. The Air Force has suffered a persistent pilot shortage for decades.
If we don't have experienced fighter pilots, we risk the outcome not just of the mission, but the entire operation or even the war.
You don't have to listen to the Air Force here to believe or to be led to believe that we need to be bigger. Listen to the joint force. Listen to the demands of the combatant commanders that are asking for air power.
According to Heather Penny, a senior resident fellow at the Mitchell Institute for Aerospace Studies, the Air Force has been roughly 2,000 pilots short of its goals for more than a decade. On top of that, they're dealing with outdated training aircraft, potential cuts to their force structure, and expected squadron closures. Add it all up, and it's easy to see why the service is finding it hard to make sure its current pilots are getting the training experience they need to perform well in combat.
I commend the Air Force for all the efforts they're making, but this is a long-term problem that we're not going to see the outcomes of for 5 to maybe even 10 years.
While there is no one cure-all, there is a Florida-based company working to provide an answer to part of the problem right now.
We honor our history, but we are the future. Red 6. Made in America. For America.
Founded by Daniel Robinson in 2018, Red 6 is on a mission to reimagine military flight training by using cutting-edge augmented reality and mixed reality. While serving in the British Royal Air Force, Robinson, a former fighter pilot himself, conceived of the idea while encountering problems similar to those of the U.S. Air Force.
We needed to train against, significant numbers every day of the week against relevant threats, and we were just failing to do that.
That experience led him to the idea of putting augmented reality into the cockpit of actual aircraft, rather than a simulator.
So we asked ourselves, could we make simulation work outdoors up in the sky? And that was the genesis of the idea for ATARS. The ability to create virtual synthetic worlds, but up in the sky, such that pilots in real airplanes physically are interacting with digital content and digital environments, but outdoors. And that was the idea behind ATARS and Red 6.
ATARS stands for Airborne Tactical Augmented Reality System, the backbone of Red 6's fully immersive training environments that are driven by data and powered by AI, so pilots can train safely and effectively in realistic threat situations, especially in high-speed settings. Their goal is to combine the best of simulation with real-world experience to better prepare American pilots.
We had to have a means by which we enter these digital worlds outdoors. So the enabling technology is augmented reality. And I will draw a distinction right up front. Augmented reality is not helmet-mounted queuing. Helmet-mounted queuing does not do augmented reality. It is a fundamentally different technology. We're not aiming to put a head-up display in the field of view of the pilot. We're aiming to mimic human vision and put three-dimensional contextual information into the field of view of the pilot and have it behave in a manner commensurate with real objects flown by real pilots.
To do that, Robinson says Red 6 had to create purpose-driven technology to work in real-world environments. That meant creating something that would work in any weather condition on any kind of helmet.
We don't manufacture helmets. We manufacture an AR optical system that attaches to any helmet that does everything that helmet mounted systems do, but to orders of magnitude greater, far higher standard. But it also now gives you a gateway into this digital world, if you like, a synthetic training world outdoors.
Doing that meant Red 6 would have to create something that tackled 3 specific problems. The ability to produce equipment quickly, then make it work on frontline jets, and then putting it all together to create the experience of fighting peer threats.
So the beauty of what we have is if we assume an intelligence base on the platforms, it's simply code. You put the codes in, and then much like any simulator, you're flying against whatever it is you want to fly against. So we've created environments that are scalable, able to train infrequently, and are absolutely relevant to the threats we'd face if we were going to do it for real.
For decades, the Air Force has used aerial combat exercises like Red Flag at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada to gather fighters, bombers, and refuelers and simulate real-world combat situations for all kinds of air crews. But those kinds of exercises demand a lot of man-hours, logistics, and big budgets. It's something Red 6 can offer at a fraction of the cost.
It gives you the ability to expand the training scenarios enormously, but you're still doing the job for real. So when you're in these representative threat environments, you're still under the cognitive loads you would be for real, and making the decisions in those environments.
One thing Red 6 offers pilots that they've never been able to fully replicate in training is surface-to-air missile threats. Think Maverick, Phoenix, and Rooster trying to evade their unnamed adversary in Top Gun Maverick.
Here it comes! Radar warning! Smoke in the air, Phoenix, break right!
Emergency jettison! Dagger 3 defending!
Here comes another one! Dagger 1 defending!
It's the greatest risk to an airplane being shot down. Well, now we can be physically flying the airplanes, and you'd see a surface-to-air missile launch. You can see the boost, the sustain phase. You see the smoke trail. You can see whether it's taking lead and lag. You get to fly the airplane against it, deploy countermeasures, physically try and defeat it with endgame maneuvers. That level of realism training will save lives, and we've never in our history been able to do it. So that's the benefit of bringing simulation and connecting it to live fly. There are multiple examples of that, but that one I think is perhaps one of the most important things.
Of course, the Air Force, as well as the Navy and Marine Corps, fly a lot of aircraft that aren't fighter jets. Red 6 knows this too, and built out simulations for a number of training scenarios, like in-air refueling.
The first time you ever go air-to-air refueling as a pilot, whatever kind of pilot, is the first time you go air-to-air refueling. And it's scary by day and it's terrifying at night. Well, now we can start to utilize this technology to expose pilots to this level of training in multiple scenarios. So by the time they go to these assets for the first time, it's so intuitive because they've seen the picture multiple times and they've seen it as they're physically flying an airplane.
So what does the future hold for Red 6? Robinson tells us they're already working with a number of training platforms and are making inroads beyond the Air Force within the DoD, as well as Britain's Ministry of Defense as well.
I really believe that ATARS doesn't just represent a brand new, really important technology. I think what we've actually done is create a new market. And I think this is going to change training to the point where it will never be the same again. Training has broken the world throughout the world for all allied nations. It's really in dire straits. This is the solution to how we'll train in the future. We're really excited to be a part of it.
All right, folks, time now for headlines. And you may have noticed there is a guest with me, or I have some company rather with me, not really a guest, because it's super producer Brett Baker. Brett, you are part of every single show. You're also an Air Force veteran. And I've heard you say numerous times you had the most fun out of any Air Force veteran you know. Is that true?
That's true. That is true. I had an amazing career. I worked with a lot of great people. I got stationed in a lot of great assignments. I had a lot of great deployments. Nobody had it better than I did. Maybe somebody had it as good, but nobody had it better.
So, Brett, you were a Dinfos grad broadcaster in the Air Force. So you were a journalist for the Air Force covering a lot of stories And that experience obviously plays very well to what we do here on the show. For the audience out there, Brett goes with me on when we go out to these defense expos. Excuse me, Brett's there. Brett is the one who puts together most of the scripts for the show. And then the rest of us kind of, add our own flavor to it. So, Brett, really excited to have you here on Headlines. So how this is going to work is I'll give you, the audience, the nuts and bolts of the story, and then Brett and I will dive in with our insights and observations. Hopefully provide you with some deeper context. What do you think, Brett? So we just go ahead and get to it?
I say let's get to it.
One of the many emerging stories from the recently concluded Paris Air Show was Lockheed Martin's confirmation that the long-awaited TR-3 upgrade, also known as the Technology Refresh 3 for the F-35, is ready for formal government approval. The software and hardware upgrade was originally supposed to be ready back in 2023, but problems with the software pushed that delivery date back to sometime this year. Brett, you and I were at the Lockheed Martin production facility, and this news of the TR-3 was kind of starting to bubble at the time. It's ready. What do you think?
Well, I think Lockheed probably be happy to have it, out there in the world, rolling, ready to go. As soon as they get the final government approval, which I would expect will happen soon. Yeah, they've got a lot of stuff on their plate, so I would have to think getting this one off would be a big relief, seeing as how it was supposed to be done in 2024.
Yeah. Well, 2023 originally, and then
There you
all
go.
the delays and everything, right? TR3, I was doing some research on it. It's a lot to do with fusing the data or making the data fusion easier, empowering more long range weapons. Basically, the F-35 is a flying computer, and this is a bunch of hardware and software upgrades to make it more interoperable with all of the high-tech toys that the Air Force and Space Force are making available. So, like Brett said, good thing to get it off their plate, and that means they can move on to the next.
For sure. Think of it as like going from a PS4 to a PS5, and they just keep, delaying the release date for PS5. I think that's probably what this was more a situation of. The F-35s could still fly, could still carry out their missions. They were just kind of waiting on this next piece. Now they're finally, it looks like that's going to happen.
You bet. All right. And also, Brett, I said you bet. Something that I always say in interviews is
You have a you bet jar.
You have a you bet jar. For those who don't know. So Brett always hears me say you bet when he's logging sounds. Sorry about that. The next story that we got going on is, remember the M10 Booker, Brett? We had reported on it a few times. So the M10 Booker, it was $1 billion program. It was supposed to give the Army their first new combat vehicle in 4 decades, but was killed back in May. So what was the Army's loss? Can now be the Marine Corps' gain. At least that's the opinion of 2 Marine officers in a recent Task and Purpose opinion piece. Lieutenant Colonels John Dick and Daniel Phillips state their case by arguing the M10, which is not a tank, would suit the needs of mobile recon battalions better than the newly integrated ultralight tactical vehicle. Brett, I say it's not a tank because it's not. The armor isn't as thick. The gun is not as big. But it is an armored vehicle that these Marine lieutenant colonels think that the recon Marines might be able to use when they're poking and prodding around the battle space. What do you think?
Yeah, I think anytime you've put that much time, energy, and investment into something, I would have least liked to have seen, hey, let's see if we can find maybe some other purposes for this before we just kill it outright. So I really appreciate these 2 Marine colonels coming aboard and saying, hey, look, maybe there's another use for this. Maybe this thing doesn't have to go away completely, especially if it suits their needs. I don't begin to pretend to know what the Marine reconnaissance needs, but if a couple guys who are in that position say, hey, this could work, I think they're worth listening to.
You bet, right? So yeah, the Marine recon guys, they share a lot of mission sets with special operation forces, to be honest with you, but they are within they are there to support the main infantry of the Marines. So they do some recon, they do some battle space shaping is what it's called. And they do amphibious recon, land recon, all kinds of stuff. So might be an opportunity where they need to, put a hole in a building, take down a bridge. Maybe they come under fire and they need just a little bit more protection than what the ultralight tactical vehicle can offer. those ULTVs, super fast. It's basically like a marine pared down pickup truck that's, super light, super fast. But it's not necessarily offering the most armor, and Marines might have to face some of that. So, we'll see what happens with the M10 Booker coming up. And this last story, Brett, is on the C17 Globemaster. There's some talks about possibly restarting that production program. No word on which country is asking Boeing to restart the C17 Globemaster program, but it's possible. In your Air Force days, did you have any opportunity to ride in one of these things?
I did. I actually spent a lot of time in C-17s in, I want to say, the summer of 95. They were brand new back then. They still had that new airplane smell. I flew on one over the English Channel to the VE Day 50th anniversary commemorations, which is pretty awesome. But here's my favorite C-17 story. When the Air Force launched Global Reach, Global Power in the 90s, Global Reach was the lift portion of it. We can move anybody anywhere, take anything anywhere, get it at any time. And so I decided to do a story on the C-17, and I found this mission that launched out of Charleston Air Force Base in South Carolina. So we flew from Charleston to Lodges Field in the Azores, that's Portugal. And then we went from Lodges to NAS Sigonella, which is on the island of Sicily, and then changed crews, except for me. I stayed with the jet because it was my story. So then we flew the C-17 from Sigonella to Bahrain, and then back to Sigonella. In Bahrain, we picked up an entire unit, a squadron of people, and all of their gear and equipment because they had been in Bahrain for months. And so we picked them all up, flew back to Sigonella, back to Lodges, back to Charleston, and then finally on to Mountain Home Air Force Base, which I think was like some 14,000 miles round trip. Wow. I was the only one that stayed with the jet the entire time because that was kind of my story. The theme was, think of the Pony Express, except now we just changed the rider and not the horse.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of fondness for the C-17, but that is a very big ask to bring back a program like that. It is not an easy thing to A, start, B, shut down, and then C, consider restarting. That takes a lot of moving parts and pieces, but I can't see where another country would want it because it's an outstanding aircraft and it does so many missions so well that I think, that would, if Boeing's got somebody saying, hey, we're willing to pony up, maybe they consider it.
Right. With potential fight in the Pacific, with what we're seeing with Israel and Iran right now, with Israel having to rely on American tankers, the heavy lift capacity, the giant tanker capacity is something that, the Air Force calls it the exquisite systems. And it's something that a lot of smaller countries don't have. But with the U.S. kind of pulling back from NATO, pulling back from that world police role, you start to see these other nations, stepping up and saying, hey, we want some more of those toys also. So could be a good thing for American industry. Could be a good thing for world defense. We'll have to wait and see. Brett, really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Let's make this a regular thing. What do you say?
Absolutely. I think it'll be a fun new part of the show.
All right. When I say the words Whiskey Project, what images come to mind? Right? Me too. So imagine our surprise when we pulled up to the team manning the Whiskey Project group booth at Modern Day Marine, only to learn whiskey was code for watercraft. And I mean, it was impressive, no arguing that point, which is why it's our weapon of the week. Even parked on a display stand in the middle of the Washington, D.C. Convention Center, the 30-foot Whiskey Alpha makes an immediate impression. Touted as being crafted by warfighters for warfighters, the Alpha is essentially a product of Darren Schuback's personal experience.
I left the Navy and I had a mission to build the boats that I wish we had. Throughout my tenure in the Navy, I experienced a number of different challenges with the small craft that we were conducting our missions from, whether they were safety, performance, or just being generally fit for purpose for the mission at hand. So that was our primary focus through the development of this business.
Based out of Sydney, Australia, Schuback is the Whiskey Project's founder and CEO. He tells us the Alpha and its big brother, the 40-foot-long Bravo, feature modular platforms that maximize deck space and payload, making them adaptable for various operations.
It was important for us throughout the development of the craft to maximize versatility with any craft we design. And you'll see here in the Whiskey Alpha, it's completely modular by design because the mission sets can change. They can change at a moment's notice, and we need to be able to adapt our craft, adapt our technology to be able to provide a fit-for-purpose solution for the mission at hand.
Mission at hand, but also like the customer might be different, right? Like the Australian Royal Navy might want something different than the USMC, then the Navy, they all might want something a little bit different, and you're able to kind of give them that playground, so to speak?
Yeah, that's right. It's almost like choose your own adventure with the craft. Whatever you need to do, however you need to adapt the craft, you can do that. And that's not only through the back deck area here, it's through the modular mast system, it's through the access to power, versatility of the architecture underneath the deck here. So it's more than just the deck that you're seeing here.
Schuback says the Alpha and the Bravo are built for quick deployment, offering convenient access and retrieval. Both can be transported by land or dropped from the air.
What we've done here is demonstrated what we believe to be an ultimate package for the customer, base level package for the customer. We've designed the craft to have that open architecture, electronic infrastructure underneath the craft here so that they can essentially plug and play as they see fit, whether it's by sensor system, whether it's by autonomous systems or remote control systems, whatever they want to plug in, they can plug that in.
One major consideration for the design team was improving the ride for the operators. Schuback says historically, crews working on small boats get pretty beat up and have to deal with knee and back problems, the types of injuries that could end careers. So both boats have shock mitigating hulls built from carbon fiber composite. That means the boats are more stable and operators don't get tired or sore on the way to the fight.
The design of this hull provides a 40%, up to a 40% reduction in shock onto the hull and therefore onto the human or onto the sensitive equipment that we're hosting on board. It has a lower planing threshold as well, which means it gets up onto the plane and stays on the plane a lot better than the traditional deep V craft, creating more fuel efficiency with the craft as well.
As for potential customers, Schuback tells us 4 of the Bravos have already been delivered to Marines in California, where they've been tested extensively for several months. And the Alpha that we were on in DC was actually sent to Marines in Tampa, Florida for testing and evaluation.
All opinions expressed in this segment are solely the opinions of the contributors.
All right, folks, that's going to just about do it for us this week. Sure hope you had some fun, learned something along the way. Want to thank Brett Baker for helping to turn our headline segment into something new, and thanks to my wife for this awesome shirt that I got as a Father's Day present. It finally came in the mail, so I had to bust it out for the show. If you want to tell me what you think of my fashion sense, you can. Just go ahead and like and subscribe to our social media feeds. Leave a comment in the section that you're supposed to leave comments in. I do read those, despite my friends, family, and coworkers encouraging me not to. All right, for my wrap this week, and with America's birthday just a couple days away, I want to spend some time on patriotism, which simply means devotion to and vigorous support for one's country. I love the United States. I love the fact I live here. I love the opportunities it affords me. I love our origin story about fighting against oppression. I love how people around the world still want to come here for a chance to live the life we have. I do not love everything our country has done. I don't love the atrocities committed against the native people who lived here first. I don't love that we used slave labor to build much of what we have. And I don't love the current animosity and infighting that seems so prevalent today. But I love this country, and I'm a patriot. So in my devotion to this land, I also support this country. What does that mean? Well, the definition of support is to bear all or part of the weight, or to give assistance, to help. If you call yourself a patriot and you don't help your country, you're a liar. So what does the United States need help with right now? Patience, the return of decency and civil discourse, affordable homes, well-paying jobs, schools that teach life skills and aren't diploma factories. I mean, take your pick, folks. The country could use some help in lots of areas. So have fun this July 4th, but also think about how we can fulfill our patriotic duty all year long. How can we help this country all year long? For senior producer Brett Baker, video editor Brian Spencer, and graphics artist Dakota Patillo, I'm Ryan Robertson from Straight Arrow News, signing off.